Nicole's wedding invitation hit my kitchen table like a live wire. She wanted me to see her new life. 2 years after our divorce, I knew the only reason I was being invited to some fancy rooftop party in Dallas was to watch me squirm. I was dead wrong. I stared at that thick envelope for a long minute. The paper felt expensive, like the kind of stuff Nicole always dreamed about. My name was written in gold letters that probably cost more than I used to make in a day back when I was pulling wire for other people. The return address said, Reunion Tower Rooftop, Saturday sunset, dress code black tie. There was a photo tucked inside, Nicole wearing a diamond that could power a small city. The light hit it just right, and you could practically hear the cash register singing. I set the invitation next to my coffee mug on the counter. My place was simple. Small house in East Houston, 2 bedrooms, workshop out back, filled with the tools that actually mattered. I'd been sleeping there maybe 4 nights in the last month. Most nights I was on job sites or in the shop, running conduit, troubleshooting electrical systems, building something real. People think electrical work is just about flipping switches. They don't understand it's about making power flow where it needs to go, when it needs to go there. I poured coffee from the pot I'd started at 5 that morning. It was strong and black, the way a man drinks it when he's got real work to do. I read the card again. Mr. and Mrs. Troy Sullivan. Sullivan. Oil money, private jets, the kind of man who could buy a refinery with his lunch money. He was the type who moved markets with a phone call and probably had more politicians in his pocket than loose change. I called Lance Coleman. He'd been my foreman back when I worked for the big commercial outfit. Later became my partner when Patterson Electrical got off the ground. Still the guy who wrote the first check when my business was just a name on a truck and a toolbox full of dreams. She invited you, he said when I told him. His voice had that edge it got when he was trying not to laugh. She wants to spike the football right in your face. Yeah, and you're thinking about not going. I'm thinking I don't need to watch that circus. Lance exhaled hard. I could picture him in his office, boots up on the desk, hat pushed back. You should go. Not to talk, just to stand there. Let them see what they're looking at. You remember what you told me when you started this business? I didn't answer, but he kept going anyway. You said you got married to have someone believe in your work. She stopped believing the minute you left that steady paycheck. This ain't about her anymore. It's about you. Go. Wear the suit. Stand tall. Let the work speak for itself. He wasn't wrong about any of it. People like to say marriages die slow. Ours died in one afternoon. The fight started small like they always did. I'd told her over breakfast that I was quitting my job as lead electrician at Morrison Construction. Good salary, good benefits, the kind of steady work that made family barbecues peaceful. I was done with it. I had plans and a pull I couldn't ignore. Patterson Electrical, a company that specialized in retrofitting old industrial systems without ripping them out completely. Not glamorous work, but the kind of essential service that kept refineries running and factories humming. The backbone kind of useful that built this country. She set down her spoon and laughed once. Then she saw my face and stopped laughing real quick. You're what? Starting my own electrical contracting business, Nicole. You have a mortgage. I know. You have no customers. Not yet. You have no office. Shop's out back. She leaned back in her chair, arms crossed like she was bracing for impact. This is some kind of midlife crisis, Shane. You understand that, right? You're walking away from everything adults work for. For what? For some electrical work you do on weekends? It's not weekend work. It's skilled trade work. Prove it. I will. She shook her head slow, like she was explaining math to a child. I am not going to lose my friends and my lifestyle and my sanity while you play contractor. I looked out the kitchen window. The neighbor's sprinkler system was running, the kind of automated setup I'd wired the year before. Good clean work that would run for decades if maintained right. I'm doing this, I said. You're choosing this over us. I'm choosing this for us. That's not what I'm hearing. We didn't talk much after that. There were weeks of cold dinners and colder shoulders. She took more yoga classes, spent more time at the mall with credit cards that somehow always needed paying. I worked like a man trying to outrun a house fire, pulling permits, bidding jobs, building a reputation one satisfied customer at a time. 2 months later, my grandfather's toolbox disappeared from the garage. It had been sitting on the workbench since he passed, right where it belonged. 3 generations of electrical work in that box. A 1958 Klein pliers set my grandfather used when he first started wiring houses in Houston. A 1967 Fluke multimeter my father bought after landing his first big industrial contract. A Craftsman toolbox with our family name engraved in the metal, scratched and dented from decades of honest work. None of them were worth a fortune to most people. To me, they were worth everything. I asked her where the toolbox went. She was on the couch, scrolling through her phone like she always was these days. "What?" she said, not looking up. "Grandpa's toolbox. It's gone." "Oh, that." She kept scrolling. "I sold it." I stared at her. "You what?" "We were behind on bills. My credit card, some things. I took care of it." "You sold my grandfather's tools." She looked up then, like I was interrupting something important. "We needed money. You said this business was for us. Start acting like it." "You didn't even ask." "Because you would have said no. You never say yes to anything that isn't your plan." I sat down heavy in my chair. The room felt like it was tilting. My throat went tight thinking about my grandfather's hands, calloused from 50 years of electrical work, but careful with every connection, every splice, every tool that kept the lights on. She stood up, phone still in her hand. "Don't act all dramatic. If you'd kept your real job, we wouldn't be here. You sold them to cover credit card debt for spa treatments and shopping. We needed a life. We needed respect." She made that snorting sound she'd perfected. "You and your respect. You know what respect looks like to me? Stability. A house that doesn't care if your customers pay on time. A husband who pays bills without a speech about craft and legacy." That was the day something finished breaking. We tried counseling twice. She saw a future where I apologized and went back to working for someone else. I saw a future where I kept building until the company in my head had weight and substance. We separated 6 months later. Divorced 6 months after that. In court, her lawyer asked about income projections. My lawyer asked about the tools. She rolled her eyes and said, "He's a dreamer who thinks he's an artist. That's the problem." The judge looked tired, like he'd heard it all before. The ink on the papers dried fast, and that was that. I walked out into Houston sun that felt too bright and air that felt too thin. Standing on those courthouse steps, I promised myself 2 things. I would not hate her, and I would not stop until the work proved itself. The next 2 years were a narrow road with deep ditches on both sides. I slept in the office more nights than not. I showered at the gym down the street. I ate what I could afford, and sometimes what I probably shouldn't have. I learned how to write proposals that didn't put customers to sleep. I found one early client who was tired of replacing entire electrical systems when half of them just needed smart retrofitting. Then another. The techniques worked, the systems ran clean, the old equipment stopped fighting the new. Lance joined full-time when we landed our first refinery contract. We bid jobs, completed them, fixed what needed fixing, and bid some more. That first real profit didn't feel like a victory lap. It felt like oxygen. I bought one thing for myself with that money. A new Klein tool set, professional grade, the kind that would last 40 years if treated right. I had them engrave S. Patterson in the metal, just like grandfather's old set. It looked like a promise kept. I didn't think about Nicole most days. Some nights I did, but not about her smile or her laugh, about that toolbox, about hands and inheritance, about how some people will sell the past when they think it makes the future safer. The morning of the wedding, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, adjusting a tie I hadn't worn in 2 years. The face looking back was different somehow. Leaner, more settled. The kind of face that belonged to a man who'd learned something about himself and decided he could live with it. My phone buzzed, Lance again. "You sure about this?" "I'm sure. Remember what we talked about. You're not going there to prove anything. You already proved it." "I know." "Good. Now go show them what they're looking at." The reunion tower rooftop smelled like money and magnolias. Dallas spread out below like a circuit board, all lights and connections running power to where it needed to be. String quartet under white tents, servers in black carrying champagne flutes that looked like crystal lightning rods. The kind of view that made traffic look like art. The kind of guests who were used to their names opening doors that stayed closed for most people. I wore a dark suit with clean lines, good shoulders, pressed sharp, The new Klein multimeter sat in my jacket pocket like a quiet reminder. I didn't try to hide what I was. I walked in and felt that old instinct to make myself smaller. I didn't. I took a breath, squared my shoulders, and remembered Lance's words. Stand there. Let them see what they're looking at. A woman in silver glanced at my hands, clean but marked with the small scars that come from 30 years of electrical work. Then, at my face. She gave a small nod, the kind people give when they recognize competence without needing to prove it. A waiter offered champagne. I took water. My hands were steady. The crowd was exactly what I'd expected. Oil executives, real estate developers, the kind of people who measured success in zeros and influence. They moved through conversations like current through well-designed circuits, efficient and purposeful. I recognized a few faces from business magazines, others from job sites where I'd worked on their facilities. Nicole made her entrance like a planned explosion, hair perfect, dress fitted like armor, smile wide enough to power half of downtown. She moved through the crowd like electricity through copper wire, fast, efficient, and dangerous if you weren't careful. She saw me across the room, and there was that flicker of surprise, then satisfaction. She came over with a woman I recognized from some Dallas lifestyle magazine. She didn't waste time with small talk. "Shane," she said, "you made it." I did. "I'm impressed. It takes character to attend your ex-wife's wedding. I admire that." Her eyes said the opposite, but I'd learned to read between the lines years ago. "Congratulations," I said. She showed me the ring, 4 carats, flawless, the kind of diamond that could blind a man if he wasn't careful. "It's substantial, in the best way." She tilted her head, studying me like a problem she was trying to solve. "You look improved. New job? Something stable?" "I run Patterson Electrical." She smiled like a teacher humoring a slow student. "Right, the garage business. You still calling it a company?" "Every day." She leaned in, voice soft, so her friend had to lean closer too. "Listen, I want to introduce you to someone. Don't be awkward about it. Be gracious. This is his night. You're in his world now." She turned and raised her hand. Troy. Troy Sullivan carried his years like a man who'd paid for them in oil money and cattle. Tall, broad shoulders, suit that fit like it had been waiting its whole life for him to wear it. Silver hair, eyes that read rooms and balance sheets with equal precision. He moved slower than younger men, but the crowd moved around him faster. That told you everything you needed to know. He reached us, and Nicole took his arm like claiming territory. "Troy, this is Shane," she said. "My ex-husband. He does electrical work." She made electrical work sound like a hobby that had gotten out of hand. He left a real job to chase some contractor fantasy. It was interesting for a while. Troy looked at me, and his eyes sharpened like a blade finding its edge. He tilted his head slightly. "Shane? Shane Patterson?" "Yes, sir." He blinked once, twice. A grin hid his face like sunrise. "Well, I'll be damned," he said. He stepped forward and clapped my shoulder hard enough to make nearby conversations pause. "Partner," he said, loud enough for half the rooftop to hear. The word partner landed like a live wire hitting water. People stopped talking. Nicole froze, her brain trying to process what she was hearing. "Partner?" she said, voice thin as copper wire. Troy laughed, the sound rolling across the rooftop like thunder. "Business partner. Damn good one." He looked at me again, shaking his head. I knew that name was familiar. We've been moving fast on the industrial contracts. He turned to the nearest cluster of guests, faces you'd recognize from Forbes lists and oil company boards. "Y'all need to know this man," he said. "Shane Patterson, CEO of Patterson Electrical. Smartest investment I've made this year." The quiet shifted to a different kind of attention, focused, sharp. The string quartet seemed to fade right on cue. Troy lifted his champagne glass. "We closed a $15 million industrial retrofit contract with his company last month. Valued the operation at $50 million and climbing." He looked proud, like a general introducing a field captain he knew would win any fight worth fighting. Nicole's smile fell off her face like a bad connection. I could see her jaw muscles go tight, then slack. The friend in silver stared at me, then at Nicole, then back at me. She wasn't trying to hide her shock. Around us, the crowd leaned in like iron filings drawn to a magnet. "15 million?" Nicole said. Nothing followed. Troy kept going because men, like Troy, know how to hold a room. We've got Gulf Coast refineries calling. There's a chemical plant in Baytown that doesn't know it's about to become our next project. He looked at me. 7 a.m. tomorrow, we start the conversation that becomes a handshake by lunch. He set his glass on a passing tray. He looked at my jacket pocket where the Klein multimeter made a small, precise bulge. Good tools, professional grade. Thank you, I said. Nicole tried to recover, but she was working with damaged equipment. You invested in the business he left me to tinker with? Troy turned slowly. He considered her the way an engineer considers a faulty circuit. He said nothing for a beat that stretched like a high-tension wire. Then he smiled, but it wasn't friendly. I invested in the business he built while everyone else was making noise. Color rose in her face like voltage climbing. I didn't make noise, she said. You called it a contractor fantasy, I said. My voice was calm, steady as house current. It surprised me. Garage business, your words. Troy's eyes slid back to me, and something like respect passed through them. I reached into my jacket and pulled out the multimeter. Klein professional grade, engraved metal, the kind that would outlast most marriages. Cost a little more than the old set, I said, but it won't get sold off for credit card debt. The line hung there like a completed circuit, simple, clean, true. I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. I was trying to finish what got started 2 years ago. A sound moved through the crowd, not quite a gasp, but more like the way you hear transformers humming under load. Nicole swallowed hard. Her body turned toward Troy like a compass that had lost magnetic north. You didn't tell me, she said. Didn't think your opinion of electrical work would be relevant to the business decision, he said. A camera flashed somewhere. Someone whispered my name like they were testing how it sounded. Troy looked at me again. Partner, he said, softer this time. Hell of a thing, building something from nothing. Your numbers were honest. Your work was solid. Your service is boring in exactly the way that makes money. Thank you, I said. He nodded toward a private area, set off with leather chairs and a view of the Dallas skyline. We should talk. 5 minutes. Then I owe this crowd a toast. Then I need sleep. Tomorrow starts early. He turned to Nicole, and the look he gave her was like checking a connection that might not hold. If you'll excuse us, he said. It wasn't really a question. She blinked. Excuse you? He took her hand, squeezed it once. The squeeze felt like a message in Morse code. Enjoy your guests, he said. We'll be right over there. He didn't wait for agreement. He didn't look back. We walked across the rooftop, and people made space without being asked. The quartet found their rhythm again. Dallas sparkled. Below us, like a printed circuit board running clean power. Sorry about the theater, he said when we sat down. But sometimes the truth needs volume. I'm not sorry, I said. He studied me. You feel good about this? I feel honest. Good. You didn't gloat. I respect that. Men who need revenge make bad partners. Men who need truth make money. Truth runs quieter, I said. He smiled. Not tonight, it doesn't. He leaned forward. Tomorrow we hit that Baytown project. They'll try to lowball. They'll try to delay. We'll show them your retrofit specs, your zero downtime installations, your safety record. We'll show them that refinery manager in Beaumont who went from 6-month shutdowns to 6-week maintenance windows. I'll bring the technical drawings. You bring the expertise. I'll bring the leverage. He looked out at the party, Nicole moving through guests like current through a damaged wire. Business on a rooftop. Contracts in the morning. Life doesn't sort itself into neat categories. No, sir, it doesn't. He gave me a look like he was testing an idea. You know why I liked your proposal? He asked. Because you weren't selling dreams. You were selling solutions to problems that cost real money. That's what old men like me buy. Fewer headaches, better performance. I nodded. I've had my share of both. I can tell. He paused, choosing his words like selecting the right tool for a specific job. I won't give you advice about your ex-wife, but I'll give you a fact. People who need to be seen will sell anything that blocks their view, even family tools. That's a true fact? It is. He stood. 5 minutes is up. I should go be decorative for the cameras. He put a hand on my shoulder. You did good work, Shane. Now go get some air before we start the real work tomorrow. He walked away, and I sat there a moment longer. I watched Nicole pose for photos, her smile too bright. like an overloaded circuit throwing off sparks. The diamond caught spotlights and scattered them like a prism that couldn't focus its energy. I walked to the edge of the rooftop where the city spread out in grids and connections. Heat lamps glowing under steel umbrellas, landscape lighting in perfect patterns. Beyond that, Houston ran east toward the refineries and chemical plants where real work happened every day. Somewhere down there, tomorrow's job sites were waiting. Somewhere in a corporate office, contracts were being prepared with my company's name at the top. "Shane," Nicole's voice behind me. I turned. She stood holding her bouquet like she'd forgotten what it was for. Her dress was stunning, the kind of thing you see in magazines. She was still the woman I'd married, and that fact stung without cutting deep. That's how healing works. You keep the memory, lose the voltage. "I didn't know," she said, "about any of this. You didn't ask. I thought you were going to fail." I did fail, many times. Then I didn't. Her eyes were bright. Tears or lighting, I couldn't tell. "I sold those tools because I was scared," she said. "I thought security was love." "I know." I looked at the skyline, then back at her. "I needed someone to believe in the work. I couldn't." "I know." There wasn't much left to diagnose. She tried once more to control the current, old reflexes reaching for switches that weren't connected anymore. "You didn't have to embarrass me." "I didn't try to," I said. "I tried to tell the truth." Her mouth tightened like a bad splice. "Is it satisfying?" she asked, changing direction like electricity finding ground. "The business?" "It's useful," I said. "That's better than satisfying." She nodded once, then twice. She looked past me at Troy, who was working the crowd with practiced precision. She touched her ring like checking a connection. "Congratulations," she said. She didn't sound like she meant it, but that was fine. I didn't need her to mean it anymore. "Be well, Nicole," I said. I walked toward the elevator, leaving her standing in a circle of light that looked expensive, but didn't seem to warm anything. The doors opened. I stepped inside. The mirror showed me a face I recognized. Not young, not old, steady as house current. Downstairs, the lobby was quiet. The air smelled like polished wood and something floral I couldn't name. My phone buzzed. Lance. "How'd it go?" he texted. "Better than expected," I typed back. "Job meeting at 7. "I'm in," he wrote. "Proud of you, partner." Outside, the night was soft and warm. A valet ran to fetch someone's car. I walked to the end of the circular drive, where it was darker and quieter. I stood under a live oak and checked my multimeter out of habit. Digital readout, steady and true. Time and voltage, both reliable when you know how to read them. I thought about my grandfather, about the hardware store where he first learned electrical work, about tools that hold their value and work that stands the test of time, about what it means to build something no one else can sell. The ride home took me east through a city that forgives and forgets and builds and rebuilds every day. Past restaurants where meals cost more than some people make in a week. Past billboards selling everything except satisfaction. Past a place that runs on oil and electricity and the people who know how to make both work right. My phone buzzed again. General Counsel. Contracts ready for signature. Meeting confirmed 7 a.m. Another buzz. Baytown Project Manager. Looking forward to technical review. Heard good things. A third. Lance. Truck's loaded. Coffee's made. Let's go make some money. Roger that, I typed. Time to do the work. The road home was clear, lights green like the universe was giving me right of way. Not luck, not approval, just permission to keep building. At a red light on Highway 6, I looked down at the Klein multimeter. Professional grade, properly calibrated, built to last. Expensive in the way that changes everything. Paid for with long nights and difficult customers and code that had to be perfect the first time. The kind of expensive that builds character. I smiled. Not for cameras, not for crowds. For me. My house sat dark at the end of a street where working people lived. Small yards, older cars, the kind of neighborhood where men got up before dawn and came home after dark, covered in the honest dirt of real work. I pulled into my driveway and sat there a moment, engine ticking as it cooled. Inside, I hung my suit jacket carefully. It had done its job. I set the multimeter on my kitchen counter next to where Nicole's invitation had been that morning. The contrast wasn't lost on me. Expensive paper promising someone else's happiness versus reliable tools that delivered on their promise every single day. I poured a glass of water and walked out to my workshop. Everything was where I'd left it. Clean workbench, tools organized by type and frequency of use, electrical diagrams pinned to cork boards. The smell of metal and possibility. This was where Patterson Electrical had really started, not in some corporate boardroom or investor pitch meeting, but here among the wire nuts and junction boxes and the quiet satisfaction of making things work. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The Baytown chemical plant represented more than just another contract. It was proof that the company had moved beyond survival into something that mattered. Troy was right about the approach we'd take. Show them the numbers, the safety record, the testimonials from satisfied customers who'd learned that sometimes the old way of doing things just needed the right kind of electrical expertise to make it work better. I thought about the refinery manager in Beaumont who'd called 3 months after we finished his retrofit. Patterson, he'd said, you saved us $2 million in downtime costs. When can we talk about the other units? That was the moment I knew we'd made it. Not when the bank balance hit a certain number, not when Troy Sullivan wrote his investment check, but when a customer called to say the work had delivered exactly what we'd promised. No more, no less, but exactly what was needed. The next morning came early. Lance was already at the shop when I arrived, truck loaded with equipment, coffee strong enough to wake the dead. We drove toward Baytown through industrial corridors where refineries and chemical plants stretched along the ship channel like a mechanical forest. The sun came up orange through the petrochemical haze, and it looked like promise to me. The meeting went exactly like Troy predicted. They tried to squeeze on price and questioned our timeline, wanted guarantees that nobody in the electrical business could honestly make. But when we rolled out the technical drawings, when Lance demonstrated the retrofit techniques on a sample panel, when we showed them installation videos from similar projects, the conversation changed. Questions became requests for clarification. Objections became negotiations. By lunch, we had a handshake. By end of business, we had a signed contract worth more than I used to make in 5 years of pulling wire for other people. That evening, I called my father. He was 82 now, still sharp, still asking about the business like he'd asked about my homework 30 years earlier. How's work, son? Good, Dad, real good. Landed a big contract today. Chemical plant in Baytown. There was pride in the pause before he answered. Your grandfather would be proud. He always said electrical work was honest work. You make something that wasn't working work again. I wish I still had his tools, I said. You've got something better, he said. You've got his knowledge. Tools wear out. Knowledge gets passed down. He was right, of course. The Klein pliers and Fluke multimeter Nicole had sold were just metal and circuits. What mattered was understanding how electricity moved through systems, how to troubleshoot problems, how to design solutions that would run clean for decades. That knowledge lived in my hands now, passed down through 3 generations of men who'd made their living keeping the lights on. A year later, Patterson Electrical employed 47 people. We had contracts throughout the Gulf Coast, a reputation for solving problems other contractors walked away from, and a waiting list of customers who'd learned that quality electrical work was worth waiting for. Nicole sent a Christmas card that year, a generic thing with her and Troy's names printed in gold, no personal message. I filed it with the other business correspondents and got back to work. And if you want the moral of this story, it's as simple as Ohm's law. Never let other people's doubts short-circuit your potential. Just do the work. The current always finds its way.